We hope you enjoy this podcast. All our conversations are inspired by films we have selected to appear on SDG.VISION. So go and take a look and be inspired by people and organisations who are making valuable contributions to the Sustainable Development Goals and making our world a better place for everybody to live. Now, sit back, enjoy, be inspired, and afterwards, go and take action.
Well, a very warm welcome to the SDG Vision podcast to Chao Yin. Hello, Chao.
Hi, Pierre. Nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you as well. And we got to hear about you through one of our colleagues at SDG Vision, Dong Yu. And Dong Yu said to us, she said, I know somebody, he's a really good fashion designer and he's also into sustainability. And we thought, we've got to get him on the channel. We need a podcast. We said to Dong Yu, we said, is it possible to get him on? She said, yeah, absolutely. I think so. And thankfully, you agreed to chat with us today, which is terrific. And some people may be thinking, well, fashion, you look at Pierre and you don't think he's the height of fashion. Why is he talking about fashion? One of the reasons we're talking about it in relation to sustainability is that the fashion industry itself, according to the UN, accounts for about 10% of global carbon emissions, between 8 and 10%. That accounts for more than the aviation industry and the shipping industry combined. It's a really important issue in terms of sustainability. So we're really pleased to have you on, Chao, as a fashion industry insider and somebody who's got great experience. First of all, I wanted to ask you, where are you speaking from at the moment, and what's it like to live there, and what's it like to work there?
Okay. Firstly, thank you for your invitation, and I love to be here. And I'm currently living in Beijing, and which is also my hometown. And I used to study and live in London and also Shanghai as well. So mostly those kind of like fashionable cities. And Beijing for me is kind of like more like a route, to be honest. And I've been, born and raised, here for over 20-ish years. So which means like Beijing for me have lots of memories. And also my family's here. Yeah.
Absolutely an important place for you. And I was going to ask you in terms of, I suppose, your formative experiences. What you talked about a road, and how did that road lead to the world of fashion for you? How did you become interested through your education, your early education? You talked about your parents and friends. What led you to fashion design, fashion teaching, and fashion influencing as well that you're engaged with at the moment?
Yeah, like fashion for me is actually not a choice. It's kind of like quite natural. Yeah, because I remember when I was a kid, usually my mom purchased those kind of kids wear for me. But I wasn't like everyone else. Just like I would accept everything that my mom purchased. It's not like that. I'm quite picky, to be honest. Sometimes annoying for my mom. So since I was very young, kind of like 12 years old-ish, I start to do my own styling and also purchasing my annual clothes for myself, because my mom couldn't satisfy my wardrobe. So that's kind of my initial idea of fashion industry. And also during the middle school, in the journey, that I always want something that's ahead of the market. So which means sometimes I remember at the junior high school, I was dreaming about a very kind of like narrow, like very narrow, stylish kind of a tie for my shirts. But at that moment, in Chinese market, we don't really have that. But after like half a year, I finally find it like in a boutique shop. So that kind of like gave me an idea that I probably I might able to work for industry in the future. So because I'm kind of like forecasting for myself or for the whole market, then yeah.
Interesting. So it's a natural thing. It's been part of you since you were very young, brothers. Is that quite typical, or is it unusual? Do you think in Beijing or China?
I'm not quite sure if that very common. I only know the people around me. But at that time, I think start from the junior high school to the college time, my cohorts, the average people around me, they kind of don't really have their dress code at that time. So sometimes they would ask me, so where to purchase and about the styling questions. Yeah, so actually I love to, shopping with them and give out some of my advices. So that kind of quite enjoyable, to be honest.
It's amazing you became a fashion influencer at such a young age.
Yeah, it probably because like my mom also liked shopping when I was a very young age. She So I still remember, it was like a 6 years old was kind of ish time. She was like, she had a Chinese version magazine, so which is quite trendy and chic. She saw a leather boot, and she's kind of like, I have to buy it right now. Like no matter how many boutique shop or shopping mall I have to visit, and she just take me with her. So yeah, like just something I must do.
Early influences, very important. And I wonder, at what point did sustainability as an interest in fashion, how did it come about? Because, within the fashion world, I think, sustainability is important, but I imagine, well, I don't know how young you were when you became interested in the sustainable side of fashion. Perhaps I ought to ask that question first.
Well, sustainable fashion and fashion, they're, I'm not going to say completely different, but they do have a huge gap in between. So, which means somehow, I think it happens around when I was at postgraduate period. I began to realize that sustainability is a kind of like a core of the fashion future. That we really can't just get rid of it anymore. But before that, I took a long time of traditional fashion training in the college and also in the fashion industry in China as well. So it's the transitions. I took a few years to digest it. And initially, I didn't take it that serious, to be honest. I think during the master degree course, I was trying to do something about it, but it was just a concept only. But after a few years, I graduated, and then I went to the industry in China, Shanghai, to launch my fashion label called Lemrance. So at that time, it's a real business, it's a real practice in industry. It's really hard to make that concept into a sustainable business. So I struggle a lot because I have to balance the business side and also, the concept, especially in China. So, but after a few years, I kind of have a new plan for my future. And also, I finally realized that why sustainability is quite important in fashion industry after a few years, the real practices.
And what did you find out? Why is it important, do you think?
Sustainability is, wasn't just about eco-friendly, the environment, not just simple like that. But initially I was, when I have a student's mind, I was like, okay, it just, you can use some natural fibers, and you could just recycle some materials, and you could do some zero waste cuts, something like that, to show the concept that, you have such a sustainable project. But after a few years in the industry, I think usually for a brand, for a designer label, at least they have 2 seasons per year. It's mandatory. And for those kind of like a bigger brand, or even some giant luxury brands, they even have 12 seasons per year.
Can we just explain to people like me who know nothing about fashion what a season is? What does that mean?
Season means for two seasons per year, we usually can see the autumn winter or fall winter, it's a season. And there's another one called spring summer. So usually 2 seasons per year, which is the lowest, minimum for a brand. But for 12 seasons, you could add some resort, a season in betweens, and those kind of special collections or collaborations. So they could even have 12 seasons, like Chanel or Dior, those kind of giant brands.
Yeah, and sorry, I interrupted you for clarification, and you were saying that, 2 seasons is the minimum. The larger fashion houses have 12 seasons. Why is that? Why does that pose a challenge in terms of having a sustainable brand, having to weave in the sustainability? If you've got 12 seasons, it's a lot of work.
Fashion never stops. That's even you don't want to move, but those kind of seasons would pull you to go around. I mean to railways. It's kind of like a small row, so snow row that is non-stop. You have to rolling with it. Because otherwise, for next season, during the fashion week or showroom, you have nothing to show. But fashion is about the promotion, the media, the attention. If you don't have anything to show, then you despair. If you despair, you have no influence. And you have no followers, you have no buyers, you have no customers. You have no power of saying in this fashion industry. That is reality. And for one season you despair, you have no income for your business. Then how to feed your next season? So that is very crucial system. That reason why I just go back to the sustainability to remind myself the original reason that I came in, and also to do some reflection of that. So how to make this industry better.
I mean, it's interesting. I think also you, going back a bit from Lamrons, which is your brand, you were at London College of Fashion, I believe, and you were selected, one of the few students selected to show your collection as part of the very prestigious London Fashion Week. And I wonder, in terms of practically, how did sustainability, or did it at that stage, how did it shape the way that you thought about what you were going to present at London Fashion Week?
Well, for that final collection for my master degree show, I was trying to actually have like multiple good ideas, but it's a press show because I was selected by the jury of London College of Fashion, and at that time I was thinking what I want to deliver to the audience that represent me as a designer, and from Chinese background, or have those kind of like a sensitive eye to look at the average ordinary things. I did lots of research, and also something related to my aesthetics, and also my beliefs in the philosophy, and which close to my culture background as well. So the collection's name is called "You Cannot See the Forest for Trees." So it's quite interesting. Quite, I try to get some really generic garments as inspiration, and I do some like construction, but not wildly. Is obvious. Conversely, I do it quietly. I just want to keep the normal image to challenge people's cognition of something that they thought they already understood. So, which is kind of like those kind of like a suit jackets, the shirts, the suit trousers, those kind of things. And also for the materials, I use some like the dead stock materials. Like, so I went to some like my favorite fabric shops in London. They only purchase those kind of shops. They only They only sell something left over from the big brand, and also from the industry, and it's a quality materials, but they only have like few meters. You know what I mean? So I like to, as a student, firstly, it's reasonable price, which is very important. And secondly, their quality. And thirdly, that I believe I can make that transform in something different. So yeah, that's kind of like my journey.
So you're using what you call dead stock, which is fabric that otherwise would have not been used, and that's sustainable. Obviously, that's sustainability in the sense that it's new, it's not new fabric. It's repurposing fabric.
Yeah, that is something I could share a little bit more, because as a student, I think I waste a lot, not just me, but what I see, because I also teach. So what I see from the fashion education, students waste way lots of money and materials. The waste is not just about the purchase that they didn't use, or they didn't use wisely, or they kind of like, well, wasted material. You know what I mean? Somehow they even purchase something really expensive, like lace or satin or like 100% wool. You know, those kind of like valuable materials that they don't really know how to use because they're still learning. So I'm not saying that they don't deserve to work with this kind of material, but you could do it in a better way. So I remember when I was at BA course, my tutor, she asked a fabric company, to donate some leftover fabrics to us to make some draping works for an exhibition. And the fabric company can also use their work to promote in their showroom. And we got exercise in draping with those kind of like a free fabrics. So it's kind of like a win-win-win. It's not just like a two-win. Kind of like we benefit three sides. And it also works in my postgraduate time. So we have some collaboration unit. So which means we collaborate with, as you remember, we collaborate with a luxury lace company, usually collaborate with those kind of like a Chanel, Dior, those kind of thing, like a big fashion house. I won a challenge with them. So they kind of like donate a certain amounts of like luxury lace to me into my like a master project. So I'm really grateful because we could benefit like both sides. And also for the fashion education, I do have some collaboration with some luxury brands in Italy, and we also invite some creative directors, and also invite our students to have a upcycling project. So that can be really good to let everybody, different parties in the industry satisfy.
Yeah, that's terrific, and I think that it's as you say, it's using things in a normal way, but also having sustainability as a mindset rather than something that's just a bit of an add-on. And I was really interested when you referred to, I take normal sort of designs and then make them more interesting. And Lamron, which is your business, I think is normals spelt backwards. Normal is that right?
Yes, that's cool. Actually, yeah, I created that name for my label, but it was my label. It's not my label anymore. So I have to clarify it. But the name, I designed the name. because it was originally from the backwards of the normal. So that kind of like a trick, and also the core of that brand. So we look at the ordinary things among us on the daily basis, and to squeeze or to transform them into poem.
Into what? Into a poem, did you say?
Yeah, into poem.
That's nice. That's lovely. That's very artistic, and that's lovely to hear. And how were the other students that you were working with? Were they as engaged as you were with the issue of sustainability, or did they just see it as a bit of a side issue?
Well, because I work in fashion industry over 8 years. I mean, fashion education industry. So it's not with every student I ask them to do the sustainable fashion, especially at the beginning time. But after few years, I began to realize that we have to do it. It's not just about the fashion school's preferences. They do, but also about which is more healthier, for this industry. So, especially after I had my label experiences, I began to focus that sustainable fashion should be focused and should be passed with our students with their students' life or their fashion career as well. So I remember some of my students, we had some work related to the zero waste cutting and also the bio designs, which means we use like a bio leather, created some leather age material based on plants or based on those kind of like vegetables.
That's really interesting. And was the texture of like leather? Was it similar to leather from this
Yes.
plant-based material?
Initially, we did lots of experimentation. So to test which materials is better to form. And after that stage, we went to the color stage. So how to dye it healthily, how to dye it without pollution, without chemicals. And after that, how to make it more leather feeling or different leather textures, like crocodile or fish or lamb or even cow. So how to mimic those kind of texture or color into those bio leather. So it's the next stage. And then how to make them become a garment. So we have to, think about to sew it or to iron it or to, use different techniques to make them come together as a 3D look. Because otherwise it's just leather. It's a flat material, right? But garment is 3D. So you have to deal with your finishings.
It's interesting. I mean, this was all things that you were working on with students in the college.
Yes. Some of them are like in high school, some of them like in undergraduate. Yeah. So I think my oldest students are applying for some PhD even. So one of them is going to do some like research around BioLiver or yeah. So I think I did have some influence on the next fashion generation.
That's wonderful, and I know that you were teaching and also designing curriculum as well. It was a large fashion academy in China, wasn't it? I think.
Yes.
Do you think that? I mean, it's one thing that for students to think, well, okay, we've got to do this sustainability thing. It's something we're told that we've got to do, and so we'll keep Chao happy and we'll do it. Do you think that actually students' perception of what they were doing, of sustainability, changed throughout the course to seeing it rather than something like this is what we've got to do because it's the fashion at the moment, it's got to be sustainable, rather than thinking as it actually becoming part of their mindset as a fashion designer?
Yes. So I'm actually, sometimes I would tell them not just to put sustainability as a concept. You have to keep it in mind as a mindset. So that is but it was you always like a journey. Initially, it probably just a concept in their mind. But after, they kind of like get involved with fashion practices or their career experiences, they would become to know why we have to keep that in mind instead of just performing or even greenwashing. Those two things are completely different.
It is, and I wanted to come on to greenwashing because I think the fashion industry is probably no different to any other industry. There is a lot of greenwashing that goes on, and what I mean by that is companies claiming environmental work and environmental virtue without actually doing it through marketing, clever marketing, etc. Do you think that was something that is prevalent, that happens a lot in the fashion industry, and how can we call it out? How can students or customers of a brand, how can they say, hang on now, you're not living up to your claims of being environmentally sustainable?
Well, there's definitely a fine line between them. And I think the brands are quite smart now. So because they know that the press and media are quite sensitive and critical, especially in fashion. Fashion editors are quite critical and sharp, you know. So nowadays we usually would think about, how to make it more sustainable instead of greenwashing. How to put it? Well, greenwashing usually happened in the past decades. It's more usually happen for those brands for like fast fashion. As we know, they did a lot of greenwashing. I wouldn't say the name, but nowadays you barely can see those fast fashion still alive, So they have different patterns. If they are keep doing those things unhealthily, the market, the audience, the customers, or the fashion industry, the editors wouldn't allow them to survive that long. You see what I mean? So how to do a sustainable fashion is not just about the how to put it, like eco-friendly thing, but also a healthier circular business as well. It's a circular economy. So, for example, I would like to share like the Uniqlo. The Uniqlo is a fast fashion brand, but is quite different compared to other like fast fashion brands, especially during the COVID time. What I've seen from the report, the news, that the Uniqlo is still climbing during the COVID time. So which is quite surprising. And for me, I purchase Uniqlo a lot because not just because they have like a smart business pattern, but also they did a lot under the stage. Well, they're not like a seasonal trend like other brands does. They more focus on how to make the fabric with a lower price. They not purchase. They actually have their farm. They have their own farm to grow, own sheep to produce. They have their like a healthier like ecosystem for their factories or their manufacturing process. And also, the Uniqlo usually will be criticized as boring. They're not like other trendy brands. Like, okay, they don't have like big shoulders. They don't have like light colors. It's kind of like an average look. But you don't see they have like lots of collaboration with fashionable or designer labels like Lebrun. Oh, sorry, not Lebrun's, Le Mer, or other creative directors in charge of big house, where those kind of smart moves. They kind of categorize different customers and their preferences. So it's kind of like all age range for this brand. So which is more sustainable business as well.
It's interesting. We had a little chat before we came on air and did this podcast, and something struck me. You said to me that when you choose clothes, your choice is focused on what will fit with my current wardrobe,
Oh
so
yeah,
that you can wear these things for longer periods of time rather than having to discard it because it doesn't fit with your wardrobe. And is this what you were referring to with Uniqlo, that's the thought as well behind that, or is this something completely different?
it's actually related. Because it took such a long time for me to do with my wardrobe. Because I remember before the college, look into my wardrobe, you can see lots of wow pieces, like outstanding pieces, but they're not wardrobe. But as a brand, you need to have your own image, which means like your personal. You have your own characters, because you are not like a drama queen. You have to have different shows to work on. You have to keep your image professional, but also recognizable as well. So just like you said, like we had the conversation that we had last time. When I purchase a new item or product or clothes for myself, I was not just to look into it like, oh, this is a fantastic piece that I have to take it home. No, I would double check it in mind, like to think of if I take it home, to look at my wardrobe, how many pieces can match with this to style more looks or to harmony other pieces as well. This is a very important question for everyone. Otherwise, you would purchase I don't know, like our harmony thing to wardrobe and fight with other pieces. And there's the only thing stand out is that, and you have nothing work with them.
So it leads to perhaps less purchases in the long run because you have a wardrobe that all the clothes complement each other. It achieves the look that you want. Because I believe in fashion, the turnover, we talk about fast fashion. And, the amount of discarded items has just rocketed. It's just so high now that people buy something and then a couple of months later they put it in the bin and they buy something else. But you've almost got a buying strategy there for you as an individual.
Yes, because I think we have to purchase less, but purchase smart or smarter, and also to make those clothes last longer in your wardrobe. I think it could be a healthier plan for everyone, not just economically, but also aesthetically, and also smart. And you don't waste those kind of time. And sometimes, people purchase something irrationally, and after a long while, they found out they haven't even cut off the label, or never use it. And if you do that, my strategy, I think it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You're buying from a more informed and considered viewpoint. And I was wondering, this sort of fits in. I know that you've become, or I don't know whether you still are, but you certainly were a fashion influencer on social media, etc. And I can see why, because you put a lot of thought into what you say about fashion. I wondered whether or not the Sustainable Development Goals. Obviously, we're a channel that is devoted to promoting the Sustainable Development Goals. I wonder whether the Sustainable Development Goals, whether you'd heard about them, and if so, do they play a role in your fashion influencing? And if so, which of the Sustainable Development Goals is most aligned with the influencing that you do?
Well, I used to be a fashion influencer in Chinese social media platform. When I'm doing my brand, I had my like private social media account as a fashion influencer, but I also ran the brand platform, a brand social media account as well. So I think fashion is such a powerful industry that's easier to get attention, and also is fancy and is eye-catching, and also have some like interesting hot topics as well. You know, like people would talk about it because they have lots of images and even some like somehow even like ridiculous things. Um, People would love that. So, which means fashion have such a powerful to 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 let people talk. So, which means they have more power on words. So that's a possible reason why fashion always related to politics, or arts, or literatures, or usually combine or connection with other industry as well. Yeah. So as an influencer, I would just deliver something I believe and which is healthier, or I think is valuable, or I like to deliver my value or belief for them. So usually for my OOTD posts, so I would share, what I wear, but also the concept behind my wardrobe, like this, to how to purchase in a good way, and how to make it more sustainable lifestyles, and how to distinguish what is a good design, which is good for you, so which is a good material, those kind of things.
Yeah, and I think that it's really interesting what you say, actually, that fashion, particularly amongst young people, not exclusively, but if you want to get messages out around sustainability, fashion is a really good way of doing that in terms of drawing people in to the sustainable development goals or the issues of sustainability. And it's really interesting, our conversation so far. And when we've talked about quality education, which is SDG number 4, we've talked about sustainable cities and communities through sustainable industry as well, which is responsible consumption and production, which is SDG 12. Industry, innovation and infrastructure, SDG 9. So there's a lot of SDGs, of the Sustainable Development Goals, that align with your work, with the climate action number 13, less pollution, a better climate, life below water, probably, because I think that with fashion, a lot of the runoff from industries, chemicals that are used can pollute water. So it's an interesting thing that fashion doesn't stand outside of politics. It doesn't stand outside of the lives of people. It really does impact. And your work as a fashion influencer can reach more people, perhaps, than somebody who's a politician talking about sustainability, because you're speaking a language that they understand. I wonder, in terms of, I think you talked about traditional techniques and traditional cultural work before, and I wonder whether or not within your design work and within your fashion influencing, that respect for innovation and sustainability that you have to engage with. How do you balance that with, I don't know whether you do, perhaps you don't, but try to bring in more traditional techniques and sort of cultural patterns, etc.?
Well, for me, I think cultural, culture can also be sustainable, because we have to do with, because people talk about the sustainability in fashion. Mostly, they would go very like in one direction. I mean, not only, but like majority of people would run into the high tech side. Like we can do some bio designs, we can do some like digital fashion, we can do something like a crazy like new things. We could do some like robotic things. We could do some smart fiber. They all to go run one direction. But for me, I'm a person always like to make some different voice. So when people go there as a fashion, as in fashion industry, I always want like, okay, why not look into another side? So which is a completely different side, which is craftsmanship and also the heritage. And so we look into the traditional cultures, such as like traditional weavings or some like weaving, embroidering, or those kind of heritage techniques that from the history or from the last generations. But those kind of things are why those kind of luxury brands work. They have lots of, they were proud of their culture. They're proud of their craftsmanships. They were proud of their techniques and hand doing things. It's handcraft. And that is why they value that much in fashion.
Do you mean what the fashion the big fashion brands value that craftsmanship?
Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Dior, those kind of like couture fashion. They have to make sure their pieces are handmade. They're unique. They have really a high level of techniques or machinists or pattern making or they like fabric manipulations are unique. Instead of fast fashion, they wouldn't pay much of attention on that part because the price is different.
Yeah, and I wonder whether you can give us some examples of how you've incorporated textile techniques, craftsmanship from previous ages into your work. Have you got any examples at all?
Oh yes, I think I did some pleating, like in my work before, because I was trying to do a upcycling project, and I found a lattice fabric left over in the studio, and it was like a pinkish check, like a check fabric, almost like a bed sheet. So I do have some like good memory about that sheet fabric because I was at a I remember it was my sheet, bed sheet when I was a kid in the school. So when I saw that fabric in the studio in London, it reminds me a lot of my memory. So as part of the Chinese culture background, I would think of that is withholding our memories in squeezing into very tiny tube or box, you know what I mean? So some really small area thing can contain a huge space that you can never imagine. You know what I mean? Like usually, maybe in the West, only the bigger space can contain this tiny little spaces, right? For example, this kind of like the notebook, you can only contain some tiny words in there, right? But for us, those tiny words or characters actually deliver or contains a lot more deeper or imagination carried with that simple structure or characters.
Are you talking about sort of the cultural stories
Yeah, the culture stories.
within a garment, for example, that people may not be aware of?
Yeah, they're not aware of, like just like DNA. DNA is tiny, but it's carry the human being's informations, just like that. So back to the topic. So that's the reason why I was trying to make a pleating with that fabric, because after the pleating, the bigger fabric would become smaller, and it folded together, and you actually could just do with that with some illusion, like after the like during the movement. So yeah, so I did that, and also I actually went to the pleating studio in London. I was trying to ask them for help, like to do a bigger pleating for me, but it doesn't really work because they can only do with the same color uh, fabric, but for the check, they cannot do that precisely. Uh, so I have to do that just by my hand. Um, yeah, that's it. But it reminds me of that, like we could actually to collaborate with those kind of like craftsmen, where they actually have more experiences on their hands doing fashion or cotton patting or weaving or whatever. Um, the designers can actually work with them to co-design things together. Firstly, we can provide lots of jobs for them, especially for the rural areas. They know these techniques, but they don't know how to make money by their work. Actually, we can do that. And secondly, those kind of techniques and heritage are dying. Like, because we live in urban cities, but they're not. They don't know the information and the messages from the urban. So we can take that message for them, and we can just work together to make sure those kind of things will stay longer in human.
Yeah, and you can tell the story behind it as part of a brand if you're developing this in partnership with craftspeople.
Fashion needs more new attention, and also you have to be irreplaceable, because there's so many familiar or similar brands nowadays, especially in the cities. Like they'll do some minimal, they'll do some like unisex or whatever. They don't really have this brand identity. But if you do what I said, like the heritage, the culture, you work with the craft, you could have a lot more interesting background and storytelling.
And you presumably, if it's handmade, I guess not always, but particularly if it's craftsmen doing something that they've been taught as young people, does that lead to higher quality and sort of more attention on detail?
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's for sure. Like couture or high fashion brand or labels, they're not just proud of their materials, but also their finishings, the quality of their finishings, and the special techniques they're using, and they're handmade. Those can enhance the value for the product. So I remember when I at the master course, my Patenkaiser Sarah told me something that is really inspiring. She told me that, you know what, Yin, like designers are not just to drape some like big silhouettes and some like weird structure to sell. You actually through a design to sell more fabrics. So that is kind of a really interesting concept, that you are deal with the material. Designers help those kind of materials to sell after you're manipulating them, you know. So the value of the design or designer is how much you enhance or how much in between, like the original fabrics or material, and after you design your work. So the differences between them are your value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you're doing something with attention to detail, as craftsmen will do, then the possibilities are huge, aren't they? And sometimes they can be very small. Sometimes most people may not notice the differences that they can do, but actually they're very important. And as you say, they've transformed a material.
Yeah.
Interesting. We were talking about young people, and young people these days. A lot of young people are very, very interested in climate issues, social justice. Also interested in identity, their identity and consumption, as well as we've talked about. What role do you think that fashion can play in shaping the values and habits and aspirations of youth, not just in China, but globally?
Well, in my opinion, I think somehow for young generation, climate change topic is too big for them somehow, because it will not happen tomorrow, you know. So young people wouldn't, I mean, the average young people wouldn't take that seriously, because it doesn't, you know, influence their or impact on their tomorrow's dinner or next year's plan. So people would think more now things, so the present things. But for me, I believe in a concept. It's called karma. Well, it's not so. Doesn't have to be that mysterious things, but I know there's a cycle of our ecosystem, which is quite simple. Let's take the fish as a example. So if you throw a bottle in the sea, and the fish, probably one day they would eat it. And when fisherman catches the fish, which ate the bottle, right? So you would have that polyester fiber in the fish meat, and then transform into yours. So it's a cycle. It doesn't mean your behavior wouldn't impact in the whole system, but it actually does.
And how does that relate to sustainable fashion, and how sustainable fashion can influence the habits and the values of young people, do you think?
Yeah, because I've read lots of articles uh, in fashion academia side. Um, so fashion is the number two like pollution industry of the world. So which means just like I said, brands have several seasons have to do per year. It's a non-stop industry. It keep doing it until there's no space for those garbage or waste textiles or garments or dead stocks to deal with. So we have to take actions now. And there's something really interesting as the second-hand market in fashion is rising during the recent years, especially for the second-hand market for luxury goods. Um, yeah, which is quite interesting. Um, due to the economic reason, for sure. People have more reserved behavior, like consumer behavior after that. So they tend to wisely to use their money to purchase. So we could educate next generation to have healthier consumer behaviors, lifestyles, to save more money because save more money for real business, and also they could dress smartly or wisely instead of like random people on the street. They could have their own aesthetics. We could educate them, um, and purchase some good things, like even to make sure they're more classical, can last longer instead of like a trendy thing.
Well, I think that you're living proof of the fact that fashion has a story to be told, a sustainable story to be told, and that that it can influence young people if you tell that story in a way that they understand, or the way that interests them. And I think this conversation we've had today is really important, because I think that most people wouldn't associate fashion with sustainability necessarily. But I think we've learned a lot. Sorry, you wanted to say?
Oh yeah, I just want to share that you know to influence the next generation, we could do with the platform or media. Uh, we could start from there, because you want to establish a conversation, a dialogue. You have to know where to find them and to speak their language as well, which is important, because nobody wants to hear a parent's annoying voice. So we have to use their own language. We have to go to them, and also to do those kind of a tiny small actions in their daily lives to make them as trend, such as like those kind of TikTok or Little Red Book, or Instagram. We could do some campaign, or we could do some smart move, interesting challenge. They actually works. People will think, okay, those things are not my thing, but actually, if you don't like it, you have to take actions to make it right, make it in your way. So the content is what we can produce, and we can influence them in their way.
No, that's right. And if you join people in something that they're already interested in, you're more likely to influence them in a more in sustainable issues as well. And I think that's the value of fashion, the value fashion can have as a cultural tool, if you like. Coming on to perhaps the last question I have for you, which is probably the most interesting in a way, is what are your plans for the future? What project do you think you're going to be engaged in the next 3 to 5 years, Chao?
Well, that is a quite exciting question to answer. Well, for me, I definitely like to keep sustainable fashion practice ongoing. And I mean, then I mentioned practice. It's not just a theory thing, because I like to take actions. Otherwise, it's all on the paper only. So I think I'm an active person. So I like to take actions, because what I learned from my past experiences is that if you want to achieve a final results that you dream about, you actually have like a GSA thing or method to do with that. So the G means the G means goals, like SDGs. We have like 17 or 16 goals, right? So the goals go first, and after you identify your goals, you do strategy, which is S, strategy. And A represents actions, which means you need to take actions after those strategies. And so GSA makes sure during the period that you assume you can achieve your results that you dream about. So back to my personal future plan. I like to do a sustainable fashion practice. Hopefully, to start a brand as a practice object. But also, I will also keep the sustainable fashion education ongoing as well, because I like to share during the practice what I learned from the real industry, through my practice. I think that is very important, because if a tutor or teacher away from the industry, what they can teach, fashion is about the new, the practice that you absorb from it, and then feed your students to let them know the reality, instead of we can do some concept thing. Otherwise, sustainability is always a concept, not a mindset, right? So, and also I like to keep working with SDGs as well, because it's not just a trend, it's a future. It's something about all humans in this world, living in this world. I like the concept that world citizens, we are not we are Chinese, you are British. I think we're all human. And those kind of powers and loves can unite us together to against the pollutions, the futures, the energies, to embrace a brighter future for us, to unite our power, to arm ourselves to against everything. So I like that. So fashion could be one of the armies, and we just a naughty army, to be honest. But it's quite kind of fun as well. I like to be the part of it.
Well, it's terrific that you're leading, or one of the leaders of that fashion army, to make sure that the SDGs are not a trend. They're the future. And I think that's a lovely place to end. And I really want to thank you, Chao, for your really considered and thoughtful views on fashion and sharing your experience with us. And we'd love to keep in contact with you and for you to come back and let us know what your goals, your strategy and your action is for the next 5 years. We would love to find out. So, Chao, thank you very much indeed for joining us on SDG Vision.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
That's a pleasure. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful, Chao. Thank you so much. That was a lovely ending. Fantastic ending.
Thank you.
I love the fashion army.